1. When I worked at a very small, higher-end pizza spot, we had other Italian foods, but mainly people came in there for pizza and cocktails. We had 2 tablets for different delivery apps. We were only open for dinner 5 days a week, so it was just me and one other guy who worked together every day. It got to the point that I would just turn off the apps when I got in. Our restaurant was pretty much only available on any delivery apps for half an hour a day. After the rush ended, but before we started breaking everything down. A couple of guests noticed that we were on Uber Eats and Caviar, but practically always unavailable right now. One of those guests tries to circumvent this by using Postmates. The assigned driver called to try and place an order, and I explained that we were not accepting takeout or delivery right now. It seriously was too busy for either of those services when we were busy. They tried saying that I had to take the order as the order had already been placed. I explained that we did not have a contract with Postmates, and furthermore, any restaurant has the right to refuse takeout whenever they want. The guy sighs and hangs up. Then the Karen that placed the order started calling over and over again. She continually tried to demand that I take her order or lose her business entirely. There was no comparable pizza spot within miles. I refused to take her order and explained that it was at the chef's directive. 20 minutes after her last call, she stomps in and attempts to place an order with the only other person working front of house, my male bartender, I'm a girl, thinking that he would take the order. She proceeds to throw a fit as he politely explains that in order to serve our tables in a timely manner, it is customary that we stop taking takeout orders whenever we are busy. The lady keeps causing a scene, clearly irritating the guest sitting directly next to the very small drink well, where she is leaning over and infringing upon their personal space. My bartender says, "Sure, whatever, lady." She whips her head around at me with a smug smirk that I wanted to slap off her face before he smiles at her and says, "Just so you know, takeout orders are taking about 4 hours right now. What can I get you?" The couple of regulars starts howling in laughter, and Karen makes that unnecessarily loud "Ugh!" that only Karens and girls under 18 tend to scream out before stomping out of there. We ended up getting our first 1-star Yelp review in years, but it was so fucking worth it. Even after the operations manager of our company lectured us on giving in to guest demands when they start to cause a scene. Deep down, I could tell the operations manager was proud of us, I think. 2. I work weekend shifts at a Japanese steakhouse. Friday evening, a family of 5 comes in for hibachi. Mother, father, and 3 sons, probably around 16, 13, and 10-ish. It's the youngest one's birthday. The whole time they're at the table, everything seems to be going fine. They're eating their food, the parents are drinking some beer. Birthday kid looks happy, no issues. When they're done, and after we've brought out the taiko drums and fireworks, the little fountain kind, to sing happy birthday, I bring out the check, take Dad's card, and run it through the machine. The machine said, "Connection error, please try again." So I put the card back in, and the transaction succeeds. As I'm walking back after dropping his card off, I hear him behind me asking if I ran his card twice. I explained that I did, but only 1 charge has gone through. He proceeds to pull up his bank app on his phone and show me 2 charges from the restaurant. The total was $150. I tried to explain to him that both charges were pending, and the one that failed would be reversed as soon as the bank had processed it. Right around that time, the manager had come over to ask what was going on, so I told him the situation, and he repeated everything I had said back to the customer. At this point, the customer was getting pissed and demanding a refund from the manager. Manager explains that we can't refund a charge that doesn't technically exist, and the guy starts trying to come into the bar area, now demanding a refund for $300 for both charges. Now, the manager is on the phone with our card vendor trying to explain the situation to them, while also dealing with the customer's increasing volume and swearing, which has attracted the attention of the other servers and the bartender. The situation moved to the lobby of the restaurant. where the customer is now demanding that we A. reverse the charge for his food, which has been 85% eaten and the rest packed up to go, and B. give him $150 in cash because he needs that money for his son's birthday weekend, and can't wait for the bank to reverse the phantom charge. Finally, the bartender speaks up to tell him that we can't break company refund policies for him, and we definitely can't give him cash and a refund for his meal. He is now threatening to call his bank and dispute the charges. To which the bartender replies that even if the charges are reversed, it's 9 p.m. on a Friday evening, and that money won't be back in his account until Monday or Tuesday anyway. The customer keeps going on and on about how we've ruined his son's birthday, and he hopes we feel great about ourselves for it. I was holding my tongue this whole time because I'm a hothead and wouldn't have been able to calmly contribute to the conversation. But I nearly lost my composure at that time, and was about to tell the guy that he was the one ruining his kid's birthday weekend, and he shouldn't have gone to a steakhouse if he couldn't afford it. I almost felt bad for the kids, who were just all sitting in the lobby watching their dad yell and curse at the manager, until the oldest one stood up and started yelling at us too, saying the staff are all adults and they need to take responsibility for their mistake. As the dad finally started to realize we weren't going to give him anything, he started walking out but demanded to know what time we would be open on Saturday morning, and he would be ready at the door to get his money back. He didn't show up. As an aside, yes, I know I should have told the guy about the connection error and asked if it was okay to run his card a second time. As another aside, he had already tipped me in cash before he realized he'd been charged twice, and I'm honestly surprised he didn't demand I give it back to him. 3. Hey, so I work in a bar which has 4 separate bars inside it. 3 indoors and 1 on the roof. I was working on one of the indoor bars. It's a bar where we have our live entertainment. It wasn't open yet, and I was setting it up and getting ready to open it for the show that we were putting on. Before the doors open, pre-booked parties are allowed in early to pick their own seats, one of the perks of booking to see the show. So our manager went to the rooftop bar to fetch the groups that had pre-booked. I watched as they all came in one by one. They all looked normal until they walked in. You could spot them a mile off. The type of group that you just look at their hair and think, fuck's sake, because you know they're going to have a problem with anything and everything, and they're going to be looking for any way they can possibly skimp on paying or get a refund. So as the doors open and the show is in full swing, orders are coming up on the bar and I'm making them. I hear a shrill woman shriek, "How much? I'm not paying that!" I didn't even have to look up to know it was Karen with her dirty blonde hair with platinum highlights. Our server came up to the bar to explain that she hadn't been charged for her mixers, the little bottles of Coca-Cola, etc., on the rooftop bar, and I know for a fact that if she wasn't charged for them, it had definitely been an accident. Maybe a server forgot to charge them, or the bartender didn't bring it into the till before printing off the receipt, but either way, she should have been charged. I told the server that I would handle it. He was new and obviously wasn't very good at dealing with confrontation or difficult customers. I went over to the table and put on my fake customer service voice. "Hiya, I've been made aware that there was an issue with your order."
"Yes, I've been charged for mixers in this bar, but I wasn't charged for any mixers on the roof."
"You weren't charged for any of your mixers on the rooftop bar? My goodness. How many mixers weren't you charged for?"
"We got 3 drinks with 3 mixers, and it was £12 on the roof, but it's £18 in here."
She was making a huge scene, to be honest, over £6 no less, which makes it extra pathetic. You're a grown woman, for Christ's sake. And anybody with any common sense knows for a fact that if a bar didn't charge you for your mixer, then either there's been an error somewhere along the line, or is part of some sort of promo. And we weren't doing any promos. It's obvious that she was fishing for some sort of discount to be given, or for her to receive free mixers again, even though she knew she should have been charged in the first place. Now, I for one am of the belief that one should have the attitude of, "Oh, I got this cheaper by accident. I should thank my lucky stars for that, and pay normal prices now that the error has been corrected," rather than the entitled viewpoint of,
I didn't pay for it then, why should I pay for it now?
and not gonna lie, I've been waiting to use this one on a customer for a very long time. Well, thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. Sit right there while I correct your order. She shared a look with her little coven of Karens. You all know the one. The,
Haha, I told you if we make a fuss we get free shit look.
So I came back to the table. Again, I just want to thank you for your honesty. Very few people would be kind enough to point that out. She looked confused, and I put her edited bill in front of her. I added those mixers they forgot to charge you for onto your bill. Your new total is £24. Cash or card? I'd like to pretend it ended there, because that would make for a better story, but obviously she argued with me further. But every time she mentioned they didn't charge her on the roof bar, I again thanked her for letting us know, and that they'd been added onto her new bill. She eventually did end up paying the £24, and said she'd never come back, so that's a win-win in my opinion. Maybe next time she'll not look a gift horse in the mouth, and keep her Karen mouth shut. 4. A woman, the Karen, comes in with what I'm assuming was her husband and son and daughter, and asks to be seated 4 for lunch. We're not really a restaurant, but we do have a small apps menu with sandwiches and wings and stuff. I give them menus and Karen says, "But wait, do you work here?" "Yep." "But you're pregnant. You can't work here if you're pregnant." "I work here. I don't drink here," I say with a laugh, trying to keep the mood light. The woman looks me over and says, "Have you taken any prenatal courses? Do you really think that's responsible to have your unborn baby in here?" This is where I made an error. I get defensive about anyone asserting I'm a bad mother, obviously. So I said, "Well, you've brought your kids in here." "Yes, and what kind of example do you think you're setting for them?" I'm still collecting my thoughts at this point, when they grunt and wave me away. I figure I can kiss my tip goodbye, but hopefully that'll be the end of a discussion. I see them flagging down the bartender after a few minutes, and figure they're ready, so go over. Karen asks to speak to a manager. Now they haven't even gotten drinks yet, so nothing above my abilities could really be wrong yet. I just ask if there's anything I can help them with, and her husband, Mr. Karen, says,
"No, just a manager. Didn't you hear my wife?"
The place is too small for a manager. It's just servers and bartenders and 2 co-owners. The one who's working in the back is on a phone call and will be pissed if I go and bother her. I realize they're probably still uncomfortable with my being pregnant, so say maybe Ella, the other server, can help. But Karen just gets up to physically look for the manager. I admit defeat and go back to drag her off her call. The owner tried not to let on how mad she is about being disrupted, and goes over with a big smile to ask if there's anything she can help them with. Karen informs her as though it's urgent breaking news. "Your server is pregnant!" Owner says she's aware and asks if they'd prefer a different server. No. She can't be a drink girl if she's pregnant. That's child abuse." I assure you, none of our employees drink on the clock. Especially not our pregnant ones. If you'd prefer, I can have Ella serve you.
"I don't want my kids seeing this."
Maybe I'm missing something? Seeing what exactly?
A pregnant woman around all this alcohol.
I don't know what you're insinuating, but I would never drink during pregnancy. Look, honey, didn't you take a health class in high school? With a drink right under you half the time, alcohol vapor is absorbed into your blood through the air, and then that blood goes to the fetus and poisons it. Owner and I exchange a look and realize we won't get anywhere with her. So we can have Ella serve you, or I'm afraid there's not much else we can do.
We're not leaving until she's placed on maternity leave, or better yet, fired.
We can't help you.
I'll call the police. You're an accomplice to child abuse.
There is no child abuse to speak of, sir. Please leave.
You may not think a fetus is a child, but I was taught to believe life begins at conception. And I will stand up for all living things. big and small, because that's what my Lord and Savior wants me to do.
The entire time she's delivering this tearful speech, she's looking around expecting others to, I don't know, join in with her? Applaud? You're disturbing my customers, and if you don't leave, you're trespassing. And I'll have to escalate this, which I really don't want to do.
Jesus is love, and Jesus says this is not okay. Jesus said you think it's okay to abuse a child if it's small enough.
This is an Irish pub, and the owners are devout Catholics. She wasn't having any of this. Hey, I don't need anyone to tell me what Jesus said. If there were abuse here, I'd have acted to stop it, but there isn't any. I need you to please leave.
I'm calling the police.
You do that. We just stopped trying to service her table. As we all wait for the cops to arrive, Karen keeps trying to give her sermon, but there was a game on that people had come to watch, and eventually everyone yelled at her until she piped down. Enter awesome officers. AO1 and AO2. Yeah, police, we received a call. Is there a Mr. Karen in here somewhere?
Right here, officers.
You said you were witnessing child abuse. Are the parties involved still in the bar? They point me out. I pretend not to notice because I'm worried the officers will take them outside, and I won't be able to watch any more fireworks.
So, what exactly was going on?
Says Officer 2.
That woman was drinking. She's pregnant. You can plainly see she's very pregnant.
Before I can go over and tell them she's lying about my drinking, the officers look at each other and look back at the Karen family.
That's not illegal.
What?
Look here.
It's definitely not recommended, but it isn't illegal. Now, do you know the woman? Is she a friend of yours? Family?
She works here, in a bar. And she's pregnant.
I want to see this place's liquor license revoked.
So, listen, she isn't doing anything illegal. What I can do is I will talk to her, but we can't take any action beyond that. Is there anything else you observed you'd like to report? So the second officer comes over to me and takes me to a quiet spot, while the first is getting their personal information and taking the rest of the statement. Karen is crying again, and I assume bemoaning being the last bastion of good Christian morality in this bar. Awesome Officer 2 introduces himself and congratulates me on the pregnancy, and says I probably overheard why they were called, and starts to offer me some public resources for new mothers, parenting classes, etc. I didn't want to interrupt him, so was waiting for the right moment to interject with my plea of innocence. That's when the patrons come over thinking I am in trouble and start defending me. We have plenty of regulars who know me, and they would not let this BS stand. Some even complained to the officers that the owner had asked the Karen party to leave and they'd continue to make a scene. So both awesome officers go talk to the owner, who said she was just about to call them herself on account of the trespassing. But sirens outside are bad for business, and she was hoping the Karens would eventually leave on their own. The officers tell the Karen party they need to leave.
This is a public place. I have every right to be here if I want.
No, sir, it's a private business, and the business owners have asked you to leave. Sounds like more than once, but at least once since we've been here.
This is a disgrace. This is an affront to scripture and child safety and...
I understand you're upset. Let's talk about it outside.
He places a hand on Mr. Karen and gives him a firm look. This next part was said as Mr. Karen walks out backwards so he can keep yelling at us, but bumping into things every step of the way.
I'll be contacting the authorities about your liquor license.
Bump.
I happen to be close personal friends with the mayor. Crash. And you two, I want badge numbers. Don't think we're done here because we haven't even started.
So the officers took them out, and it was told to me by a regular who left around the same time, walked the Karens to their car, which was illegally parked in a handicap space, for which they were ticketed. They did make a complaint to the liquor authority, claiming, among many things, that we served minors. We can't prove it was them, but we're sure it was them. We were investigated and obviously came up fine. My boss asked me to hold off sharing the story with anyone until the matter was settled, but now it is, so I had to share. Still laughing about it. 5. I don't want to go into specifics, but for the past 5 months now, I've just been mentally checked out of my job. This past weekend, after some aggravating and tiring shifts, and then getting some infuriating news this past Wednesday, I finally had enough. We had just recently got a new head of the department of the country club I work in, banquets, and from what I've witnessed so far, she will not be effective at her job. The first 2 weeks I've worked with her, she's been really soft-spoken and hasn't actually worked any of the events we've had yet. She'll occasionally poke her head in, ask if we need anything, and then retreat to the offices to sit on her phone. This past weekend we had a training session for all food and beverage staff, and near the end of it she told us all that leaving before an event was over and not properly notifying that you were missing a shift was unacceptable under her. A few hours later, during an event that we had that day, she left while it was still going on, leaving the banquet without any sort of management figure to answer to. Not even the club's GM was there because he had left. This was the first thing that set me off, because I'm only a banquet server, and I'm not in any sort of leadership or authoritative position. The following Wednesday, for about an hour before an event was about to begin, me and the other person working had found out that our manager would not be coming in. The reason was that her roommate had returned from a trip to Florida, in the middle of a pandemic that the US has yet to properly address, I know, and had to quarantine. While this was an issue all in its own, what really infuriated me was that we didn't hear it from her, but rather from our club's head chef. To say I was angry was an enormous understatement. It was 2 hours later, when our club's dining room manager had come in, that I decided now was the time. I sat her down and very emotionally told her how infuriating and unacceptable this behavior from a brand new manager was, how I had enough and was ready to walk out on the spot, and how ready I was to move on. I was asked if there was anything that they could do to keep me on staff because I was one of very few people who worked there that actually had any banquet experience, how my performance had been a great boon not only to banquets as a whole, but also how my work complemented that of our club's head chef, how my success was needed so he too could be successful in his role. I was told that she had hoped that I would take on the role of banquet manager. I told her in no uncertain terms that I was not in the right frame of mind to take on a management position there, because of the unjust firing of my previous department head, and how the previous banquet manager and his girlfriend had left because of said firing. I told her that I felt that the club had betrayed me and my friends who had become like a family to me. At this point I was full on ugly crying, and I'm getting a little emotional right now. I finish off telling her that I'm going to look at leaving soon, but not to take this as a 2 weeks notice, but rather a warning that it will happen in the near future, and possibly at the drop of a hat. I cannot properly express how cathartic it felt to finally get all of that out in the open, after holding it in for the past 5 or 6 months, with all these feelings causing me much undue stress and anxiety. With my last semester in college about to start in the next few weeks, I'm reluctant to stay on because I'm not sure what my workload is going to look like with the formats my classes are taking, mostly online and one hybrid, but I'll probably stay on until the end of August. Honestly, I'm lucky enough that I could probably go the rest of the year without a job, because I live at home with my mom, have relatively very little expenses, and have been banking all my unemployment payments since mid-March. Also, after tomorrow, I have the next week or so off because we have no banquet scheduled, so I'll have a nice little reprieve before I go back to school. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, episode 109. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories and sent in stories for use in this video. You know, sometimes it seems to me that the world is getting more and more arrogant in its stupidity. I mean, people like the Karens in that story there, they seemed at least to just occasionally pop up. But now they're more and more becoming, I don't know, have they always been there? Or have they just become emboldened in their stupidity? Certainly not something to be proud of. Anyway, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.